Hey there, this is Anthony from mycodeteacher.com. In this lesson, we're going to go over how to add a tab bar controller to your iPhone application. So a tab bar controller, much like a navigation controller, is an object that is able to take some information from you, the developer, and create a nice graphical representation of it. So you can give it the tabs you want to display, and then you can give it the view controller for each appropriate tab, and it will basically take care of all the graphics drawing for you. So it will add into its view property what it should be displaying at any given time. So when a different tab is selected, it will modify what it shows. Um, it will list right from the beginning all the appropriate tabs and all their icons and titles. And so it takes care of a lot of the work for you, and it really makes it easy for you to implement this style application in which you've got multiple views that the user can switch from simply by selecting the view with the appropriate icon. So of course it gives you that nice elegant black glossed look. So I'm going to create a new project here, and rather than choose tab bar application, we're going to go with window based, and then I'll show you how basically how to get to what you're given with a tab bar application when you choose that from nothing or just the window based application. So let's click choose and create that. Call this tab bar controller. Okay, and so if we open main window, of course all we have is the default blank main UI window instance. And so the first thing we want to do is, of course, add a tab bar controller to our instances window, right? And so here, if we double click on the tab bar controller object in the instances window, Interface Builder is kind enough to actually show us the actual view that the tab bar controller will display. So it's actually sort of interactive here. We can click on a tab and it will update or switch the appropriate view controller here. So one thing to note about a tab bar controller, if we click on tab bar controller and look at the attributes inspector panel here, you can see that you can create the items here, each tab, and then you can choose the class that you want to display. Now, you'll notice that these are all view controller or view controller subclasses. So a tab bar controller, like a navigation controller, expects everything to be given to it in a view controller. So if you want to just display some basic view, you need to nest it in a view controller before handing it over to the tab bar controller. It takes the view controller and then draws or displays its view appropriately when that corresponding tab is selected. So of course it gives us all these options here: navigation controller, table view controller, image picker controller, which are all subclasses of view controller. Right, so what we'll do is we'll create two tabs here. The first one we're going to leave as a view controller. The second one we will set to a navigation controller. And so you can see that's updated here. And we will put a table view in the first view and then a basic view with a button that slides to another view when pressed in this navigation controller. Okay, so at this point in time, if we were to build the application, actually let's do that, you'll notice hopefully that nothing is going to appear on screen. It's still going to be a white screen because we haven't actually added the tab bar controller's view to the window. It exists, it'll be created, and in the background it'll be basically hogging memory, but it won't actually be displayed anywhere. Right, okay, so application launches, and again, the tab bar controller, that object is created, the instance of it is created, but we haven't told our application to display it in this window that appears. So we need to do that with code. So first we'll go to tab bar controller appdelegate.h, and we'll add an outlet, interface builder outlet, for that tab bar controller so we can add its view to the Windows view as a subview. So be sure to save this, and now let's go to Interface Builder and drag from tab bar controller appdelegate instance to the tab bar controller that we created and connect the appropriate outlet. So now we can save this, and we can, in the application did finish launching method, window add subview tab bar controller dot view. Now, as I mentioned again, a tab bar controller, like any view controller, like a navigation controller, it itself is not actually a view. It's simply an object that controls a view and updates the view when certain circumstances change that relate to it. So, for example, if a different tab is selected, it will update its view and display the new tab as selected, changing the appropriate colors. Then it'll display the new view controller, the corresponding view controller, on the screen. So all we have to do is add it as a subview to window, and it'll update itself. It'll update its view every time something changes with it. So it really takes care of a lot of the work for us. So right now, if we launch the application, see here, we've got, as we wanted, we have here the tab bar is shown. The first item here is just empty view controller, and the second one, the navigation controller, also empty. All right, so let's quit this, and let's actually put some view controllers in here. So let's work on the first view first. So if we select tab bar controller, and then we select the window, and then we actually click inside of this view here. If we select the item 1 and click inside the view, you can see here that we've selected what is to be a view controller inside here. And so in the inspector panel, you can see here it says view controller. The class is UI view controller, and it asks for a title, this option here, and then the interface builder file. So we're going to create a view controller and then create a interface builder file to be associated with that view controller, and then we're going to put that in here and then put the class as the subclass that we created, and so that will automatically create an instance of that view controller and display it inside here. So let's do that. So select the classes group folder, click File, New File, and we want a UI view controller subclass with interface builder file for user interface. So we want to check that, and then click Next. We'll call this first view controller. All right, so first let's open the interface builder file. Right, and so now one thing to note, if we select files owner and click on the identity inspector, you see here that the class of the files owner is first view controller. So again, note that this files owner object is the actual first view controller. So that's how they're linked in a sense. And so this has already been connected, but just so you can see, if we right click and drag from files owner, which again is itself the first view controller object, and connect to view outlet, this view here is what will be displayed when we access the view controller's view property. So just so you can see how this works really quickly, let's put a label on here. Type first view. So now again, remember that this interface builder file is linked with this first view controller object that we created in code, this subclass of UI view controller that we created custom in our application. Let's go to interface builder and let's select the tab bar controller, click on item 1, click inside the view controller, and then first let's set the nib name to first view controller. You can see here it says loaded from first view controller, so whatever we put there, and then the class needs to also be first view controller so they match, otherwise your application will crash. Right, and so now here you can see first view was loaded from that interface builder file. This whole screen here, this whole white area, is all from the first view controller class that we created, our subclass of UI view controller. So again, this is a view controller basically here, or its view. And then again, we haven't set this up. So what we want to do is we want to put a table view in this first view controller and list just a few rows of data. Nothing that actually has any meaning, just so you can see really how this works. So let's close this for now, main window.zib. That's pretty much for now been set up. so we can just modify the first viewcontroller.zip file, and the first tab will automatically update, or its view will automatically update because it's loaded from here, right? So let's delete this and drag on a table view. Right, and again, this file's owner here is equal basically to first view controller in object that we created in code. So anything we do to file's owner, we can access, and it will also be done to this code representation of it, right? So they're one and the same, so to speak. So if we set the data source object of this table view to file's owner, it's going to go to this first view control object. It's going to ask it for its data source, and so we can implement the methods here, and we can give the table view data we want it to display that way. So let's save this, and now let's implement our data source methods for the table view. So first, of course, is ns integer number of sections in table view. Table view, return 1, we'll put 1 section. Table view, second one, number of rows in section, we'll return 5. So our table view is going to have 5 rows. And then the last, where the table view grabs its cell object for each row from, cell for row at index path, ns index path, and this is, none of this is really has any meaning, so we're going to set the text of each row to be the same thing. So every row will just set the text to be hello. Right, so cell. So again, of course, we want to check to see if the table view is already used. Our reusable cell with the identifier, we will give it default cell. If cell equals nil, so this is the first row, or the cell with that identifier has not been created yet. We want to create that initial one for reuse with style UI table view cell style default. So we just want that one large black label. Use the identifier default cell, and we want it to automatically be released. Add it to the auto release pool, and cell text label text equals hello. And we will return the cell, and now let's build this. And so we should have that table view with these 5 rows of data, all which will say hello. Okay, so basically accomplished what we wanted to here. Now let's move on to the second view. So let's quit this. And so the same process that we just followed to display this first view controller in the first tab of the tab bar controller, we're going to repeat that process, but this time we're going to actually, instead of putting it directly in the tab bar, we're going to put it inside the navigation controller. So so the same thing we did, we clicked here, this whole view controller is loaded from first view controller. We're going to do the same thing here, except instead of this whole view controller, or this whole navigation controller being loaded from an outside file, we're just going to load the view inside the navigation controller. So we'll select this here, right? And so what we need to do is we need to actually create that view controller for the navigation controller. So new file. So we're going to repeat this process, right? So navigation controller first view controller. And so we'll just open this main.zip, and we'll, again, everything's already been set up. Class has been set up. The outlet has been connected to this view here, and so we can just put what we want to display in this view. And so we'll put a button, push next view, and so we'll set up a situation in which pushing this button will actually slide on another view into the navigation controller. So let's save this now. Let's go back to the main window.zip, and of course that button doesn't actually do anything yet, but let's just load this in here. So the nib name, navigation controller first view, and then the class has to also be navigation controller first view. Let's save this and build. We select item 2, our appropriate view is listed here, right? So now we just want to make it so this, when pushed, slides on another view. So we need to first create that other view to be slid on, right? But first, before we do that really quickly, let's override the init with coder method. Now, one thing to note is when you create an instance of a navigation controller, or a view controller that is, in code or with code, you use the init with nibname bundle method, right? And so if you want to customize right upon initializing it, you can do it right in here, right, in your custom implementation of this init with nibname bundle method, right? But when you create a view controller in Interface Builder, when it's loaded in from here, the method init with nibname bundle is not actually used. A different method, init with coder, coder is actually used. So we need to subclass or write a custom implementation of that method in this subclass if we want to do the same thing that we attempt to do in this implementation of this method up here. So self equals super init with coder, and we'll give it a title. We're doing this so we can give it a title right when it's created. Self title equals navigation controller first view, and then return self. Now let's build this. Select this here, and you can see the appropriate title is listed here. It's actually also listed here. That's taken from the title. So, so if we try to add a title in here, which is what you'll normally do, you'll see that this won't actually have any effect because, again, this method, init with nibname bundle, when the navigation control, or when Interface Builder file is loaded and an instance of this navigation controller first view controller object is created and loaded in here, the method that is used to initialize it is not init with nibname bundle. It's actually init with coder. So in a way, this Interface Builder file is sort of frozen to be unfrozen and used when the application launches. So exactly as you have it here, it's basically saved and open for the application later. So that's why init with coder is used. Alright, so now we need to create that other view controller to be pushed on. So navigation controller second view controller. Okay, and let's open up the main window, or the navigation controller second view controller .zip file, and let's just put some random text here. Save this, close it now, and now let's go back to that first one. First we need to create that IB action, push second view, so we can connect this push button to that action. So again, remember that in each file, file's owner is equal to the view controller that it's created for. So this Interface Builder file here, file's owner is navigation controller first view controller, right? So we created an Interface Builder action in navigation controller first view controller .h, right? And so that'll be listed as a possible action for file's owner because, again, file's owner is of class type navigation controller first view controller. So let's connect that outlet. Right click and drag, connect push second view, save. Okay, let's close this now. And now let's implement that. So first we need to import navigation controller second view controller. We need to import those files so we can create an object or create an instance of that view controller and then push it onto the screen. Push second view navigation controller second view controller sview equals navigation controller alloc init with nib name navigation controller second view controller, and then bundle, of course, the main bundle where most of your resources will exist, and then we're going to simply push. So a view controller, any view controller has a property called the navigation controller property, and if that view controller happens to be nested inside of a navigation controller, you can access that navigation controller that it's inside of simply by calling to the navigation controller property. So self navigation controller push view controller sview animated yes. Now let's launch this. And there we have it. So you'll notice there's not actually a title, so let's just fix that there. So we want to go to the navigation controller second view controller.h or .m file, and now this time when we created it, we actually did use, because we created it in code, we actually did use init with nib name bundle method, so we can set the title here. Now if we build it again, now it has a title. Now you'll notice that this navigation controller on the bottom has a toolbar here. I'm personally not sure if that was intended to be there by default, if Apple wants that to be there by default, that is to say, but I've certainly noticed that I really don't want it there, and I haven't actually seen that anywhere in any App Store applications. So I'm going to show you really quickly how to hide this toolbar on the bottom here. So let's quit this application and go to the appdelegate.m file. So we can access all the view controllers that exist inside the tab bar controller. So each view controller for each tab by calling to the view controllers property. So let's do that right now. Tab bar view controllers, right? And so now this array of view controllers, an SArray object contains the two view controllers that exist inside the tab bar controller. So the first one is this first view controller here, and the second one is the navigation controller, right? So so if we call to array of view controllers object at index 1, if we call it to the object at index method and send it to the array of view controllers, it's going to give us the second view controller in that tab bar controller, which again happens to be a navigation controller, right? And so let's just typecast so compiler knows, right? And then simply let's set the toolbar hidden property equal to yes and hide that toolbar, right? So first we get all those view controllers, the two that we have from the tab bar controller. First one is that first view controller. Second one is the navigation controller here. Same thing you can see if we select this in the main window. Item 1, item 2. So we're going to have two view controllers in that array. First one's view controller, second one's navigation controller. And then we get the object at index 1 in that array, since we know that the navigation controller happens to be the second view controller in that tab bar controller. Don't forget that a navigation controller is actually a subclass of view controller. And then we set the toolbar hidden property equal to yes for that navigation controller. So now let's build. And now that toolbar is gone. So just a handy little trick in case you don't want that to be there. I've noticed that anytime you try to display a navigation controller inside of a tab bar controller, it shows up by default. So that's how you can hide it pretty easily. Just a quick side note, you can see we didn't actually add any icons, but if you want to, the dimensions that you're going to want to use are 30 by 30, and what you need to do is create a 30 by 30 transparent image, and the icon that you want to be displayed, simply make the actual pixels that you want to show, the ones that you don't want to be transparent, the actual image that you want to be displayed as that icon, you're just going to want to use a bunch of white pixels, right? So basically create a 30 by 30 transparent image and then create the icon all in white, and then give it to this tab bar controller. You can do it really easy in Interface Builder. You basically just select an item, and then here you can give it an image, right? We don't have any, so we can't set any images. But and then the tab bar controller, the tab bar on the bottom here actually adds all the effects for you. So it adds the gloss, it adds the blue, the white, depending on if it's selected or not. And so it makes it a lot easier for you. You don't have to actually try to mimic all the nice Apple effects added to the tab bar. So just a handy little side note to know if you plan to create your own icons. So anyway, that concludes this lesson on tab bar controllers. You can see that tab bar controllers are a lot simpler than you might have imagined once you actually see how to use them. They pretty much do everything for you. All you have to do is just say what to show when. So I'm Anthony from iCodeTeacher.com. That wraps up this lesson. I hope you learned a lot, and I hope you tune into future lessons. Thank you very much for watching.